technically released in its homeland last year and making the US festival circuit rounds now with a limited release sometime in May, Shadow marks a return to the wuxia historical martial arts genre for Chinese filmmaker Zhang Yimou, whose unique career arc took him from downbeat dramas occasionally criticized as feeling more weighed for Western audiences than authentic Chinese sensibilities to big-budget, high-grossing wuxia spectacles like Hero and House of Flying Daggers, to state-backed, mega-budget, multilingual message blockbusters like Flowers of War and The Great Wall, and even the Olympic opening ceremonies more recently. Now he's back on the wuxia kick, pardon the pun, but aiming to shake up the genre by visually eschewing the vibrant, permanent springtime pastoralism and gaudy treasure chest color scheme that's characterized it ever since Ang Lee's Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon and Yimou's subsequent stabs at the venerable swords and silk robes romance atmosphere took said genre to the international mainstream in favor of a near monochromatic desaturation where every costume, set, prop, and landscape in Shadow is cast in inky streaks of black, white, and gray mirroring the look of Chinese calligraphy, and it's almost always raining because the result is one of the most beautifully depressing looking worlds you'll ever likely to see, with ostensibly something like a melodramatic action film take place in, and imagining a feudal China sometime in the early 200 ADs, that's 200 AD as in 3 digits, so way the hell back when, that nonetheless feels like a waterlogged apocalypse whose characters are all in the midst of perpetual drowning. When the fighting begins and the blood finally starts to spill, it's less horrifying at first than it is refreshing, if only to finally see a change in color suddenly break across the palette. You know, if only for a moment. In any case, loosely based on episodes from the Three Kingdoms saga, which in turn is based on loose historical record of actual early Chinese historical events featuring real people, this is essentially a palace intrigue melodrama stirred together with a feudal spy thriller and gothic romance, complete with secret passages and lurid identity swap twists, nominally centered around a strategic dick-measuring competition at play between a scheming, unpopular young king, played by Zheng Kai, and Deng Chao as his legendary badass of an army commander who keeps upstaging him. The short version is that the army and the citizenry are impatient to take back a city that's been invaded by an enemy kingdom, but the king is a wuss who'd rather sue for nominal peace, and if that won't work, maybe try to marry off his sister to the enemy general in exchange, whether she's into it or not. The commander disagrees and has gone over the king's head by challenging the enemy general to a one-on-one duel of his own accord, creating even greater tensions in the royal court that cause further defections and political strain. But, in an additional wrinkle, the commander is not actually the commander. The real commander, having suffered a mortal wound in the recent past, has left him slowly dying and succumbing to megalomaniacal madness, has been secretly living out of sight in a series of secret passages within the palace, directing the actions of a man raised from birth as his emergency body double, the Shadow, who's now been sent out to play the role full-time as he, the real commander, and his wife set in motion a complex plan of revenge and political gamesmanship, ultimately designed to depose the unfit king from power. But the Shadow may also have a personal agenda of his own. To give away the mechanics of how this is going to work out would be to deprive the audience of the fun of watching Yimou meticulously set up what at first feels like a somber art house historical deconstruction and the inevitable crossed-up romantic business involving the commander's long-suffering wife and her feelings toward this heroic, not a crazed, scheming wall-dweller version of her husband that she has to live with half the time, only to see the film then reveal that the payoff is, while still every bit as somber, more like a gonzo wuxia swashbuckler hybrid complete with double crosses, secret guerrilla armies, retro high-tech spy gadgets, and the push to develop a new secret kung fu technique based around tricked-out razor-edge steel umbrellas, which all ends up playing out shockingly more cool-looking and less silly than it sounds, I promise. It's a gorgeous-looking and very well-acted film, maybe not to all tastes, as despite the early signs of restraint, it ends up feeling much closer in tone to the Elizabethan theatricality hysterics of Curse of the Golden Flower than any more of the more serious historical turns Yimou previously produced, but the hard turn to over-the-top bloodletting really did it for me, and the big final battle set piece involving a physics-defying secondary function of the already preposterous war umbrella weapon is easily one of the more iconic action beats of recent memory. 3 stars, very well worth seeking out. On a somewhat less jovial note, I'd like to take a moment to note that this, as it turns out, will be the last installment of MovieBob reviews that will run in this format here on Geek.com. There's no big, interesting story behind that. Nothing happened. I've enjoyed my time here. I hope you have as well. If you hadn't heard of me before, I hope you'll continue following my work on The Escapist and my independent work via MovieBob Central, Patreon, and social media. It's been really fun. See you guys around.